Well, here we are in 2025, and Donald Trump is president again. But there are those who still see election fraud running rampant in America. Toni Shuppe is one of those people. We'll discuss with her if that's true, and if so, how to right the political and electoral ship in this edition of God's News in the News. Well, thank you for joining us once again for another edition of God's News in the News, current events, biblical perspective. Before we do anything else, let's pray. Father, we thank you for allowing us to use this technology to spread the word, to get the word out on so many different things about the things that should affect us in this life and the one to come. And Father, I pray that you'll open our eyes to things that maybe we haven't seen, maybe we need to pray and intercede about as far as our country and we need to go ahead and be more. We need to be biblical citizens, and I pray that we'll learn what that is and how we can be those kind of people from what we learned tonight or this time here. We pray in Jesus' name, Amen. But before we get into all of that, there are 5 things I need for you to do on 3 places. That's like, share, and subscribe, get notifications, and leave comments on the 3 platforms where this is going to. That would be Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook. On X, just a little bit different. You just need to go ahead and like my profile, the GNITN 58, GNITN 58, and then repost the videos that you're watching to your profile. You do those 5 things on the 3 platforms and on X, what I just told you, and this will go where it needs to go. It'll be suggested on people's feeds, and hopefully they'll be able to listen to it, and I think that'll help out here. And just got to remember, we're doing God's work here. At least I think we are. So we need to go ahead and get this out where it needs to go. You do your part. I'll do my part. God always does his part. And we want God to be the social influencer on this channel. So we need to remember, stay humble. We're not building your kingdom, my kingdom, but his kingdom. Commercials out of the way. What are we talking about here today? We're talking about Toni Shuppe. We're going to interview her, fighting for fair elections. I think I'll throw that at the bottom there. And she's a lot better looking than I am, and she's a lot smarter than I am. So what I need to do is get her on here, and I will bring her into the room now. Toni, you're live.
Good. I think I was live on my platforms too, but I don't know what happened. We're good. Hi.
Well, there's some things that happen with I'm recording this, so on my profiles, it'll on my social media platforms, it'll show up probably on Thursday. But Toni, if it's streaming to your place, you take care of your audience, I'll take care of mine.
Sounds like a plan.
Oh, and you know what? We got to have a little bit. Yeah, the last time we talked, I don't think we talked about it. It was just after the first assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life back in Butler, Pennsylvania, which is 30 minutes away from you?
Yeah. I can't believe we haven't caught up. Life got so crazy after that in Pennsylvania because stuff just got real. The election felt like it didn't sneak up on us, but it did. And we just worked so hard and are so thankful we believe it's a miracle. It's a reprieve, God giving us President Trump, and it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. And you got very, very busy there. And people don't understand all the things that you do. And so it's something where you are fighting the good fight, but you got a lot on your plate. Back in 20, what was the first time we talked? I don't know, 2023, something, whatever it is. And of course, people don't know that you've talked with President Trump. He wasn't president at that time, but there's debate over that. But you've talked to him not once, but twice. And then during the election season, you used your connections to get your husband to drive one of his limos. Was he driving President Trump around? Was he actually in the limo?
No, he was driving a Suburban. He was in the motorcade, but he did drive Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown to the Steeler game. So that was fun.
There you go. You've got connections. If you haven't figured it out, she's from Pennsylvania. That's why those 2 make sense there. Are you a Pittsburgh Steelers fan? Are you a football fan?
I was as a kid. The older I got, just kind of wore off.
Okay, well, that's okay. I'm sure your husband's still into football.
He's a Kansas City Chiefs fan, though.
Oh, doesn't that hurt? Oh my goodness. So that's not what we're talking about. The whole segue of that whole thing was just to say you've got a connection to Donald Trump, and you met him not once but twice, and you talked about election fraud back then in Pennsylvania. And you started a nonprofit called Audit the Vote. And so you then now let me ask you something, because I know that you did that. What's Audit? Is Audit the Vote still working on the 2020 election?
When you say still working on the 2020 election, not from it's going to get fixed. Fixing the 2020 election at the time was, we thought, getting answers to why the heck do we have more ballots cast according to the State Department's own system, which is antiquated and needed completely torn apart and redone. Why are there more ballots than voters who turned out according to their own data? It's still the mystery, the $1 million mystery that we may never get answers to, that our state just decided to slander us and call us conspiracy theorists and not let us get any answers to those questions. So when you say, are we still working on the 2020 election? In that regard, no. But in some cases, I would say yes, because what we learned from the 2020 election is how vulnerable, in fact, the systems that we are using are. And so we're working to understand them and to get people to understand the urgency of getting involved locally in the election process, running to be what's called a judge of elections in Pennsylvania. We just did a campaign. I'm so proud to say that we got new people to run for those seats in 18 of our 67 counties. Yesterday, we had a primary election. So that's a big win. Getting people educated and encouraged to get involved, inspired to get involved, to stay involved regardless of the outcome, because that was what our founders warned us. If we ever took our eyes off the prize or our foot off the gas, that it would go south. And that's exactly what happened in 2020. So long way to say, no, we are not working on fixing 2020 from a data or get to what the heck happened, because we probably just won't get those answers. But we are exposing what is going on. We've become an election integrity watchdog organization because we understand what we're looking at in terms of data. And so we're capturing all of that and asking questions, making sure the public understands what's going on to hold the government accountable. That's our job.
Wow. That is a lot to do. And so just so people know, you started Audit the Vote in 2020 because there was election fraud going on. You tried to get President Trump. Well, it wasn't. Well, anyway, we're not going to go. You tried to get Donald Trump to look into it. I guess you gave him a lot of documents, signatures, whatever.
He was going to help us put pressure on our state reps so that they would look into it. That was the plan.
Well, anyway, though, so we're not going to litigate the 2020 election. Rumor has it that they're going to be doing that, but anyhow, but 2024 has passed. We got Donald Trump back in. I say we all voted, and you did your part to win Pennsylvania as best you can. And then, but we, here's the thing, though. We all talk about winning elections, but these elections don't stop. I mean, you've got your presidential election, then every 2 years you got your midterms, and you go on like that. That's on a federal level, but everybody else has got elections for governors, elections for council members, elections for people that are going to be delegates, all sorts of things going on. We can't just stop just because the presidential election is ended and we're still a ways from the midterms. Why don't you talk about how we need to be involved in all these other elections? Now, you can use examples from your state of Pennsylvania if you like, but let people know that you can't just stop after these federal elections. You got to keep working because, how shall we say this? The rot goes all the way down to the bottom of the tree.
Completely. So that's one of our biggest of many lessons that we learned since being on the ground in 2020 is how deep it is. And so many people just don't understand their local government at all, myself included. I'm still learning every day. I worked the polls yesterday as a clerk at a precinct in my area. and still was asking questions about magisterial judge races and what's their role. Why is that important to me? Because we're trying to understand these things so we can communicate to the public in a way that will inspire them to want to know. Because the biggest hurdle that we're up against, I shouldn't say the biggest, we're up against a lot of hurdles, but one of them is just getting your community to pay attention to local elections. Since the 24-hour news cycle started, whatever year that was when I was a kid, people now only pay attention if it's nationally recognized, and they've just kind of checked out in terms of what's happening in their backyard, which is how we got to the 2020 COVID. I'll call it a plandemic. I think it was orchestrated and planned so that they could get Trump out of office and attempt to derail his restoration of America back to what the founders intended. And we found ourselves in quite a pickle where you couldn't leave your house. You couldn't have, or the government was telling you, you can't have church. You can't gather in groups of 10 or more. You have to wear a mask. I mean, it was just, everybody remembers the COVID insanity. I have like PTSD sometimes when I think about it, because it was traumatic for all. It changed the world forever. And if we want to avoid that and get our liberties and our freedoms back, and more importantly, pass those on to our children, we absolutely have to understand how our local government works and start participating in it. And so I'm very, very passionate about educating Pennsylvania specifically, because that's where the Lord has me planted right now. But there is an election every 6 months. I didn't know that before 2020. I didn't know what a primary was. I know I voted in every presidential election since I was eligible. I think I voted in every presidential primary, although I quite frankly don't remember exactly. And so I really want people to understand what primary elections are, what every race means on the ballot, how it can affect you in your backyard, the questions you should be asking the candidates so you can decide who to vote for. There's a lot to unpack. We have a ton of work to rebuild and restore the Republic, which goes hand in hand what Rick Green's vision is for Patriot Academy. And I'm blessed and honored to be an ambassador for them and be able to carry the message forward.
Yeah, and that is a good segue to, Patriot Academy is something I'm new to as well. I think I'm coming up on 2 years. Anyway, though, we're not going to talk about me. It's because you're going to talk about you. So actually, you're over there. It's always backward to me whenever I do these things. But Toni, there. Yes, you figured it out. You got it. I want to move on to some other stuff. But before I do that, you mentioned Patriot Academy, so we got to get that in there. Your journey to where you're at right now, it's been like a 5-year journey. I don't know when your anniversary is, but you didn't know anything about this or that. Then you found out the vote. How did you go? How did Patriot Academy come in? Well, first of all, tell us what Patriot Academy is for those that don't know. And then go ahead and tell us how you got involved, and then ongoing from there, because they're Patriot Academy. I'll let you talk about it. I could talk about it, but you're the guest. You get to talk about it.
So that's a really good question. So March 13th of 2020, literally, I remember like it was yesterday. That's the day that I woke up to what was going on from the governor shutting the schools down in Pennsylvania. That was my trigger. Like, wait a minute. Is he allowed to do that? I didn't even know who the governor was. I remember asking my husband, who the heck is that? He can do that? How is that legal? And I started paying attention. I took Patriot Academy's Constitution Alive class, which was at the time a 6-week course they were offering at a national scale, all via Zoom in the fall of 2020. Patriot Academy is essentially the Lord working through Rick and Kara Green as the brainchild of Rick Green's passion to restore liberty to a nation, that he got involved in the Texas legislature in his 20s and realized, wow, this is messed up. We have to really educate the next generation about our founding documents and get them biblically sound enough to restore the Constitution. Our Constitution at the time, even back then, he knew was just being ripped to shreds. Most of us just asleep at the wheel to that. And so he started doing what is now called leadership congresses, which is taking young people between the ages of 16 and 25 and immersing them in a legislative simulation process, teaching them how to write a bill, what the process it has to go through a committee. How does it get to the House floor? How does it become a law? How does a bill go from a bill, and physically putting them in it? And it is absolutely mind-blowing how much you learn from going through that, because I did it myself for the first time in August of 2023. So that's how he started. But you flash forward today, and they have their Constitution Coach program, which literally anybody, you can know literally nothing. Sign up for free on patriotacademy.com's website to get access to the content curriculum, become a host essentially, watch the videos of this course curriculum that's been put together, and it can change your life. It can change the lives of everyone around you and your community. That's exactly what happened to me. Taking that class, I could not believe the basic civics that I didn't know. Didn't know the difference between the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Couldn't name more than 2 or 3 founding fathers, if that. Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, the 2 dudes in the picture of the Declaration of Independence. That was it. It was just mind-boggling to me, and it became very apparent that that was the problem. Like, this is it. If we could just get people to understand, to have a hunger for this information, number one, which COVID certainly catapulted us into, and then to actually study it and learn it. And I became a Constitution coach with the founder. I have a co-founder of Audit the Vote. I did not start it by myself. I truly believe, first, God gets all the glory for that, but I think we would not have got the traction that we got as quickly as we did if there weren't multiple of us. So I was with 2 other ladies. The 3 of us kind of started the movement, if you will, together. It became a nonprofit pretty much by accident, because our supporters wanted to do billboards to expose the fraud we were finding. And you have to have paid for by entity on a political billboard in Pennsylvania. And so that's the only reason why we became a nonprofit. Never in a million years could have seen where that was going. A board. I remember I need to have a board. What the heck is that? For what? Here we are 5 years later, and I just had a great board meeting last weekend and got some really good insight from my board members. All of that to answer your question on Patriot Academy. You can sign up to the curriculum. It changed my life completely. Could not believe what I didn't know. Karen Taylor, my co-founder of Audit the Vote, and I became Constitution coaches together, and we were hosting these classes in our sphere of influence on Zoom, because it was, again, late 2020, early 2021. Pennsylvania was locked down for good. It was like the governor made you feel like if you interacted with a neighbor, you were going to die or kill grandma. So people were terrified, and we were giving people a chance to build a community with like minds, with people that were starting to go, is this maybe about more than a virus? Maybe, just maybe. And what do we do about that? And it just exploded from there. We hosted a class. We would stop 1 6-week round. We would take 2 weeks off. We would start another round. And by the summer, we had over 500 people sign up for our Constitution class. And our petition was getting momentum. Election integrity was on fire. And I had dinner with President Trump in August of 2021. So it was a whirlwind. 9 months after taking Patriot Academy's Constitution Alive class, where I knew nothing, I was having dinner with President Trump. It doesn't get any crazier than that, in my opinion.
No, it doesn't. And I can, although, you say it can't get any crazier than that. I think if you look up the definition of crazy in the dictionary, you're going to find my picture somewhere next to that. Because I've been crazier than you are for a long time, because I'm older than you. But it's true. It's true. And that story does not get old with me, because all the different ways you go from one place to the next, it's faith. I believe, I think I heard the saying, faith is believing in advance, will only make sense in reverse. So you had an awful lot of faith in advance, and you didn't know that just to get a billboard up, it was going to start a nonprofit, and the nonprofit was going to get you to do a whole bunch. You got a board now because you're a nonprofit, and then all of that led you to actually talk to now President Trump again. Yeah. How it doesn't make sense, but you get there, and so there are no coincidences in God's kingdom. He knew. Well, I mean, the scripture says he knew you before you were knitted in your mother's womb. So he had this all planned out. But I guarantee you, even from what's today is May 21st, 2025. I guarantee you, if we talk a year from now, you'll have even more stories to talk about, and how you're doing this or that. You actually work for Patriot Academy, don't you?
I do. I'm the ambassador for the East Coast. My territory, if you will, is everything, all the states east of the Mississippi. And we're doing great. I mean, there's 30,000 Constitution coaches nationwide. I was on the phone just today with folks in North Carolina that are organizing and mobilizing and getting the curriculum in the GOPs throughout the state. And there's a lot of good stuff happening. It's God gets all the glory for sure. But to your point, Dave, about funny stories, I think what's really entertaining about this, I forever have the Trump card, no pun intended, with my husband, because he was a huge President Trump supporter. As soon as he came out in 2015 and wanted to run, I didn't even vote for President Trump in the 2016 primaries. That was one primary I do know I voted in, and I did not vote for him. I voted for Marco Rubio because Marco Rubio came out and said he was a Christian. He wasn't afraid of his faith. Knowing nothing about politics or anything, I just thought, well, that makes sense to me, so I'll vote for him. If you had told my husband in 2016 when he got elected, my husband was wildly excited. I was more like, thank God it's not her. Just from my faith. I voted my faith and my values, always been pro-life. And so I was just thankful it wasn't her, because she was crazy connection to Margaret Sanger and all that mess. He was absolutely excited out of his mind. He put his on his screensaver for his computer at his corporate job at the time, who there weren't all exactly like-minded folk there. He had a picture of Trump and Melania coming off of Air Force One, walking down a red carpet. I mean, he was not shy at all, and I didn't know up from down. 5 years later, he's having dinner with the president because his wife led a political movement across the state of Pennsylvania for election integrity. So I forever, we have the from the meeting, we kept the little menu they gave us, napkins we got in Bedminster, New Jersey at his golf club. He even drank a Diet Coke, a glass bottle of Diet Coke. Anybody that knows the president this well knows he likes Big Macs and Diet Coke. That's his thing. Don't know how he lived as long as he has and that he's as healthy as he is on that diet, but separate topic. The waiter at the table went to take the glass bottle of Diet Coke off when we were finishing dinner. My husband went, absolutely not. He stuck it in my purse. So we have a little in our kitchen. We have like these glass cabinets where we have a little his shrine, which we're not making Donald Trump an idol by any means, but it's just the point is, how do you explain that? And so anytime I get in the doghouse with my husband, which is more often than not since this 5-year journey, because he picks up all the slack at home that I have dropped in terms of laundry and the kids and dinner and all of that stuff, I say, honey, remember, you wouldn't have met President Trump without me. How many more get out of jail free cards is that going to buy me? I don't know, but I use it more than I should.
Oh, I would use it too. Come on. That's gold. That's right? That's the Willy Wonka golden ticket.
And you drove his motorcade, babe. Remember?
There it is. It's just all these things. You know, I know that probably wasn't at the height, that it's not the top of the list of reasons why you think God did things, but it doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt at all. I mean, come on now. It's like, what are we doing here? So, but this, I guess, you know, when we talked about, you know, we were talking before we started recording this thing, we said, what are we going to do? We're just going to wing it. And that's totally fine. But I want to get this up to speed now. So people don't realize in this whole journey, getting from 2020 to 2024 and because you worked to get President Trump reelected for the whole time. You've been working on that whole thing. I think a lot of us have been. But, you know, getting him elected didn't look like it was going to happen on a fateful day in Butler, Pennsylvania, when there was assassination attempt. You could have been there. You're not that far away from Butler, Pennsylvania. Tell us a little bit about that, how it happened, how you found out about it, all the details around that thing, how you ended up talking with people that you knew. When we interviewed you last time, we put pictures up from some pictures of the crowd there just before the shot was fired, and you knew people in that crowd.
Yeah.
Give us a recap of that and what you felt like and how it made you feel about maybe something's going to happen to him. You're not sure about it.
So we could have easily been there. The reason we didn't go, we had been to Trump rallies in the past. It was super close to home. We didn't go because my kids had a birthday party. One of our cousins was having a pool party, and I had already, you know, my kids have sacrificed a ton. They went from a mom that was completely devoted to them to now, you know, fighting for the country and also trying to maintain those responsibilities. So they sacrificed a lot, and I've had to try to reestablish, realizing this isn't short term, this is my calling for however long the Lord has me in this arena. I have to establish some balance in my life with my kids. And so I decided, my husband and I, we were going to forego the rally. We'll just watch it on our phones at the party. And that's what we were doing when the shots rang out. My husband was watching it on his phone, and we saw President Trump go down, heard the shots, and he's like, holy cow, they shot him. And I was like, what? So instantly jumped into like fight or flight survival mode, started praying. The first phone call I made was to one of my friends in the election integrity space, Captain Seth Keshel, him and his wife from Arizona. We prayed for President Trump. We prayed over him. I texted a couple other people. I'm like, okay, what do we do now? It was wild. I knew more people than I didn't know that were behind him in that crowd that you saw on the TV. I did not know the man that died. My heart goes out to his family. It was just traumatic that had to happen. I was at the second Butler rally when he came back. He did come back to Butler. A lot of people didn't follow that. They don't know that. But later in, I think it was August, he came back to Butler. That was the day that Elon Musk was on stage. That's when Elon Musk, I think on the 13th, is when he won over Elon's heart and mind, and he started speaking out. But the first time he actually had him on the campaign trail was when he came back to Butler. And that was really neat. I got to bring my oldest daughter and a friend of hers with me, and they got to experience that. They, of course, think Elon Musk is amazing. And just looking at it through their eyes was one of the coolest things ever. Just them being like, oh my gosh. And forever in history, my daughter has a Trump sign from the rally in her bedroom, and she'll have that moment solidified as she grows and wherever God calls her to do. I'm just honored that we would do that. But I was very surprised that he won the election, because it wasn't looking good. The campaign got on the vote by early vote, swamp the vote. We and the election integrity movement know the vulnerabilities that exist there. And so we were very concerned that the campaign was making that switch. And I prayed and was like, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know how we're going to win this. All the vulnerabilities for the most part are still there. Very little was done to correct the issues we found in 2020. And I felt the Lord tell me to laser focus on Allegheny County, which is Pittsburgh area where I live, about 30 minutes north of the city. The way that Pennsylvania is structured is there's Philly and Pennsylvania are the two big blue strongholds, the biggest blue strongholds. Allegheny County actually has the largest number of registered Republicans of any other county in the state, despite the fact that it's a very blue county. I felt the Lord impress upon my heart that to focus on Allegheny and get as many poll watchers as I could. And I felt like I heard him tell me they can't steal the whole state without Allegheny County. It's too big. You focus there. So that's what I did. And what we haven't gotten to talk about, I started looking for donors, recruiting people. I ended up getting people deployed on the ground on election day. I was able to secure a donor, and I was able to pay them. A lot of them donated the money back to Audit the Vote. They didn't want the paycheck. They just did it for free, which is helping us continue. We're so thankful for that, because it's why we can still put some of the money into the resources and move forward. But that was a game changer. We were able to triage things on the ground all day on election day. I even ended up on the phone with Catherine Engelbrecht from True the Vote. They were the folks that gave the data to Dinesh D'Souza for the movie 2000 Mules, and she was helping me make sure I documented what we were seeing on the ground that was going awry, documented it properly so that we would be able to triage and do something. Should they steal it again, we were ready. It's like we were not going to let them steal another election like they did in 2020. And that's, if I'm proud of anything, I'm most proud of we stopped flip and steal again.
Yeah, and that is something that people don't understand. But you got down and I was gonna say down and dirty. That almost sounds bad,
It does.
but it kind of encapsulates what we're talking about here. You got in the fight, and that's something that I've learned from Patriot Academy from day one. And I these coaches calls we have every Thursday. I learned so much. And I didn't do Constitution Alive. I did, for those who are involved, then it's BibCit, but that stands for Biblical Citizenship. That's the class that I cut my teeth on.
Excellent. So
and
good.
and so you learn a lot about the country and how it was founded. You learn about separation of powers, which I'm telling you, people do not understand that. It goes over their head and hits the back wall and hits them in the back of the head again. I'm just telling you, they don't understand it. They don't understand. Now, I could go downtown Milwaukee. I'm from Wisconsin, and so I could go to downtown Milwaukee, and I could ask 10 people on the street, what is the biblical check on the Supreme Court, and none of them would figure it out. There are checks and balances. They think that they serve for life. They don't.
They don't know the tools that are at our disposal to pressure our legislators, to put pressure on them so they won't legislate from the bench.
No, and there's all sorts of things that go on there, but you learn all of that because Rick Green has done such a great job. Him and David Barton and David Barton's son. They've done such a good job. When I did that class at my church, if I do it at my church again, I'm going to do it differently. But I said, I got to get out there and do it. We had 58, 60 people show up. And they were just amazed at how much they didn't know. So I'm going to segue here. I like I said, we're just winging this thing here, but if anybody, 30 minutes into this thing, if anybody's out there going, these people are lunatics. They are Christian nationalists. I saw those eye movements. I know what you're talking about. Whenever I hear that term Christian nationalist, I understand what it means. But whenever people bandy it about, it's crazy. So I wasn't planning on doing this, but I think we just need to jump in and address this whole canard of Christian nationalism. I'm sure it's, what it is, definitely what it is not. And if you're one of those people that believe that Christians have an obligation to be involved with their government, tell them if they're afraid to do it, what they can do. But just let's talk about it from a high view and say, okay, what is Christian nationalism and why it's not a bad thing? Just go wherever you want to go with it.
What I hear on the ground from people when they say that term, first of all, you have to understand that they typically, more often than not, that means a negative opinion of Christians being in government. And it's usually misinformed. So they don't really know what they're saying. But what they're suggesting with Christian nationalism is that we as Christians want to beat people over the head with the Bible in all areas of government. We want every pastor. We want the church and the state to be one. They think we want the state to tell us you have to be a Christian when it's actually the complete opposite. We want to be able to live our faith out in the public square, in the government circles, but also fight for those who are not Christians to be able to do the same thing so that we stay free from government tyranny. That's what it really means, but it's being completely flipped on its head and people think it's something it's not. And they accuse us of saying, you want a theocracy, meaning we want to be able to tell the people how to worship. And it couldn't be further from the truth. We want the freedom to live out our faith in the public square, whatever that is, so that the government can't ever try to become God. And it's a dangerous place where we teetered in 2020. And the new curriculum that's coming out from Patriot Academy is called Rebuilding Liberty. Rick does a really good job of explaining a Supreme Court case ruling from the Coach Kennedy case. He was a football coach who was essentially, I believe, sued for kneeling on a football field after the game and praying. He was sued, he fought it, and the Supreme Court overturned some rulings that had been in place for a long time that allowed people to have, or I should say, kept us from being able to push the envelope of having the 10 Commandments in schools and having any type of religious affiliation centered around a public square. This ruling has set us free. And most Christians don't even know that. And so this class is going to talk about empowering us to now go back into those institutions and put the 10 Commandments back there and bring the biblical worldview so we can restore morality and therefore restore liberty to a nation that was on the brink of, if not already off the cliff. I thought we were going too far off the cliff. I'm so thankful. I think that the Lord gave us a miracle by putting President Trump back there. And this is our second chance. He has given us a second chance. It's what we do with the next 4 years in our states, in our communities, in our school boards, and our city councils that will decide the next 250 years. We can still lose it. We're not secure by any stretch of the imagination, but we've been given a window. And, oh man, we got to get active in that window or we're done.
Okay, well let's go back to the Christian nationalism. I think when this new class, by the way, when's this class going to come out? When's it going to be available to the public?
It's scheduled for July 4th, the last I heard.
July 4th. Did you pick that date?
Right?
So, but let's go back. How this class is it a response to that Christian nationalism thing, or is it just a standalone thing? I got a feeling that people are going to say that look, I've got, I don't know, close to 5,000 Facebook friends, nearly Facebook friends. It's like, who are these people and what are they doing on my feed? But I can tell you that they are very, very diverse. I mean, but right now, politically, there's no in between. There's no moderates. You're either extremely left or extremely right. And the people on the extreme left are accusing the extreme right of taking over our country. Like you said, we want to make it a theocracy, and they always bring up this show, The Handmaid's Tale, or whatever it is on Netflix. I've never seen it, but from what I hear about it, it basically, yeah, it takes left nationalists putting a show on, complaining about the right, but it's Christian nationalism, and they're berating it all the time. They say this is what it is. I worked at a place where they talked about it. They say, well, The Handmaid's Tale. It would be entertaining if it wasn't so close to what's actually happening in real life. And of course, they talk about it. It's all based around how the abortion, the people that believe in abortion is wrong, how they've taken over the country and all sorts of junk. But it's all this Christian nationalism, and they use it to beat us over the head. They beat us with that. They just got it into the conversation. Um, you know, if you had a friend who accuses you of being a Christian nationalist and starting a theocracy, and you were having a conversation with them, how would you address it?
That's a great question. My first question would be, so how do you define Christian nationalists? What have I done or said that makes you think that? You have to start with questions. You can't influence somebody. Our objective, if you believe in the Great Commission and that we're called to go ye and make disciples of all the nations, by the way, all the nations, not just Christian nations, all the nations, you have to build a bridge and connect with people, find common ground before you can ever hope to influence them and take them to some type of, if you're considering it, higher ground. Find common ground first. I think the best and easiest way to do that is to seek to understand where they're coming from and start with a question. So when you're a Christian nationalist, it just, like, I've trained my brain. I don't even have to think about it. I'd go, what makes you say that? What have I done that makes you think that? And then you keep digging and you keep asking questions, and they usually end up talking themselves into realizing they don't know what they're talking about. They have the wrong definition of a Christian nationalist. And that's where the door opens then, where I can explain to them what it actually means. And you have a chance of actually breaking the paradigm and getting these people unplugged from the matrix, if you will. Doesn't always work. You get know-it-alls that, there's no way they're going to let you win an argument or talk themselves into changing their mind. They're not open-minded, but at least make the attempt by asking the question and seeking to understand where they're coming from. I mean, even the Jesus taught in parables. There's a reason he taught with stories, and asked question. He answered a question. Every time someone asked him a question in the Bible, go back and look, he answered it with a question because he wanted them to think it through for themselves and to learn to rely on the Father for answers, not him.
Okay. I'm going to make you work here.
Oh, no.
I'm going to be the one that thinks Christian nationalism is of the devil, or actually of the devil. It's just wrong. So I'm going to ask you, and then I'll play the devil's advocate, and we'll have this conversation for a few minutes here. Okay. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Toni, are you one of those Christian nationalists?
Why do you ask? What have I done that makes you ask me that question?
Well, all I hear you talk about is how the Bible should be back in schools, and how we should be praying, and how we've lost this right or that right, and how Christians should be involved in politics, and how they need to. The church's job is to evangelize. They need to stay in their lane. Politics is not their lane.
So why do you say that? What part of, if we're to evangelize, are there parts of your life that Jesus doesn't go into? What parts of your life does he not work in?
Well, he's in charge of all my life, and that's why he tells me to not get my hands dirty in politics. It's
But
a waste of time. It's a waste of time.
Is politics a part of your life, though?
Sure it is.
Then if he's in charge of all of your life, that to me just doesn't add up. So how can he be in charge of all of your life, politics be a part of your life, and he isn't supposed to guide you through politics? Help me understand.
Well, I can make up my mind. Look, we all know that the Constitution says separation of church and state.
Wait. Let
So,
me stop you right there. Where
okay.
does it say that in the Constitution?
Well, it's in the First Amendment, freedom of religion.
Really? Can we pull that? Why don't we pull that up and actually read it? Because
Well, you seem to be the one who knows the Constitution. You tell me.
So it's not in the Constitution, actually. Did you know that?
Well, no, it is.
Well, let's pull it up and let's read it. It's actually not. You have to do some history and some digging here. The First Amendment is no Congress shall make no law respecting a certain religion. It's to protect the state from being able to force religion on us. It doesn't say you can't practice. That's actually a letter from Thomas Jefferson that he wrote to the Danbury Baptist Church because they were afraid that the government was going to say you have to be this certain faith. You have to be a Lutheran. You have to be a Methodist. You have to be a Catholic. And he said, there will be a wall of separation. We will never let the state do that. So it's actually one of the most taken out of context phrases. It's nowhere in the Constitution. I would encourage you to read it. Like pull it up, Chat GPT, Google it. You should read it.
Well, but aren't there Supreme Court precedents that cite that?
So where does it talk about the Supreme Court and its role in our government? Where does that come from?
But didn't the Supreme Court say that there is separation of church and state?
When? Tell me when. I don't know. You tell me.
So what you're saying is it's not there.
Correct.
Okay. So if separation of church means what you say it means, that means that the church, the government should not be involved in the church, not the other way around.
Correct.
The government should not be telling the church what to do. So in that respect, then the church, but what happens when the church tries to take over? I mean, all these Christian nationalists, I mean, I know you don't agree with me on this, but they're trying to take over everything. They're trying to force religion down our throats. They're telling us what we need to believe on abortion. They need to tell us what we believe on marriage.
So what have they done that make you feel that?
Well, they're telling us they're telling us that these laws about marriage. I mean, all the all right, let me tell you this much here. I've got some Christians in my sphere of influence, as it were. And I asked them about marriage, and and they tell me it's between a man and a woman. And I say, well, why can't it be something else? We got all these laws that give you tax breaks for being married, but they say it's between a man and a woman, and that's it. So it's like, why is the government dealing with that? I want the government to stay out of them. I agree. Stay out of my life. Stay out of my bedroom. Stay out of all this stuff. And yet you're talking around saying, well, we need to be involved in those things. And I'm like, yeah.
So have you ever looked up, and I don't disagree with everything you said, you make some really good valid points. You sound more like maybe on a libertarian view, which some of the stuff I agree with. Mm-hmm. But how do you define, like, just look at the basic definition of marriage. What does marriage mean in terms of definition? What is it?
Well, it's between two people that love each other, and love always wins. So, if it's two men, three men, one woman, it doesn't matter. As long as there's love at the middle of it, we're okay.
So do you have any vantage point on like language and Latin, where the Latin words come from? Like, I'm big on looking into root words to find out what was the intent of the word. What does the word marriage, where does it come from? What does it mean? Do you know?
Go right ahead.
your definition is coming from what the current culture has told you it is, but you have to do some digging.
No, this is what these Christian nationalists, this religious right, are telling me. This is what it's supposed to be, and anything else is sin.
So let's back up.
Okay.
The definition of marriage. Where are you getting your definition of marriage? Like, where does that coming from?
Well, the traditional view of marriage is coming from the Bible. You know, I get that, but I'm not a Christian, so you can believe what you want to believe. Just don't force it down my throat.
Totally agree with you on that one. But the way that the definition of marriage by definition, just looking at the language of it, is a covenant that two people, man and woman, make before God. It's not a government entity. The government gets involved and you have to have a marriage license so that they can make money, and they monetize it, they tax it. By definition, that's not what it means. It is a covenant that a man and a woman promise to one another before God. So I think you're just misinterpreting what the word itself means. And yes, I agree with you. The government's gotten in and they've made it messy, and now there's money involved, and it's all this, we just want to live together and have a civil union and whatever. It's a loaded topic, and we're unpacking a lot, but I would just ask you to consider my vantage point is, what does the word mean? What does it originate from?
Well, what about the Supreme Court ruling in Obergefell, where it says that marriage is not necessarily between a man and a wife? Then the Supreme Court said it, then we got to go by it, don't we?
Well, so is the Supreme Court the branch of government what's the role of the Supreme Court, or the courts in general? What's their role in our government? What are they supposed to do?
If it's the Supreme Court, my understanding is they decide what is lawful and what is not.
So where did you read that? Where did that come from?
Well, that's what they do.
Okay, but how do you know that?
That's what I've been told. And what I have been told is, when they make a ruling, like say they make a ruling on marriage, like they did, I think it's 2015, wasn't it? When they make that ruling, then that clears it up. Then we don't have to worry about the law. The law is settled then.
Do you know what the three branches of government are? Do you know what their roles are?
You're going to go down that road?
Well,
all right. You've got the executive, the legislative, and the Supreme Court, which is the what am I thinking? The justice side of it.
Judicial.
That's the word. There you go. See, you're helping me out there.
What is the role? Do you know what the role of the legislative branch is?
They make the laws.
They make the laws. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Have you ever read the Federalist Papers?
Who has time for that?
I get it. It's hard reading. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's tough to read. But if you read them, the Federalist Papers help put context in the Constitution, and they tell us what was going on in the founders' heads when they wrote it, what the intent was. And so in the Federalist Papers, you'll find that their intention was for the legislative branch to have the most power because it was closest to the people. And you're right, it makes the law. So, but what you're telling me is the Supreme Court changed the definition of marriage, making it a law. But is that what the courts are supposed to do, is make law? Or are they supposed to settle disputes?
My understanding has always been that the Supreme Court takes the issue, settles it, says this is what's constitutional and what isn't.
Okay.
So if they say that in the Constitution there is a right to privacy, that's where they get the abortion thing. Then the marriage, they say that there's a right. The Constitution defends the homosexual marriage. I think that's what they actually said. Then that's it. It's settled.
But you're allowing by what this should have happened, if we're going to go according to the Constitution, that particular issue should have gone through the legislative branch, because that's the closest to the people and that reflects the will of the people. But instead, it went through the courts, which isn't the right place for that. The courts are something that is law you're supposed to take to the court and say, examine this law and tell me if this law actually lines up with the Constitution. And that's not what they did. They took an issue and they brought it before the court, not the law.
So when there are Christians who want this thing to be changed or that changed, they want this or that, they want their nation to look like this, aren't they trying to take over?
Why do you think that? Why do you think when they want certain things that they're trying to take over? What does takeover look like?
Well, when they get people that believe like they believe, and they want to make sure that only those people are running for office and then only those people get elected. Isn't that taking over?
Did those people make you feel like you can't disagree or you can't have freedom because they're in charge?
Well, they sure act like it by their actions. I mean, these people would take their Bibles to the polling places if we let them.
So are they forcing you to believe what's in the Bible?
Sure feels like it.
Why? Why is it? What are they doing? Because maybe there are well-meaning Christians that are Bible thumpers that try to beat it over people's head, and I would argue that's probably not the best approach. But what are they doing that's making you feel like they're forcing it on you?
I guess it just seems like it's their way or the highway, and it's like no, we should really what it talks about here, and and I just I'm gonna have to think about it. You're making a lot of good points. I think you're converting me from being a leftist to a libertarian, which is hard to do. But I appreciate that because I do agree that the government should stay out of our lives. They shouldn't be determining what marriage is. They shouldn't be determining this or that. That should be up to us to decide on our own, and I agree with that. But yeah. So
Are we done
maybe
with this now?
yes, we're done with this now. You have completely converted me because we only have 10 minutes left, and I can't keep this thing going. But I can tell you that it's instructional to people. So yeah.
Good.
But
Good. You didn't make me work for that one, did
well,
you?
I'm just saying this is the conversations that we have.
It is, and you
But
can
but
tell
see,
I've done this before.
well, you've done it before, and you're not going to convert people overnight. I can tell you,
No.
that there comes a point where you find out, this is this far and no more. You can only make up so much ground in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
I would
fine.
rather leave it. I probably push things a little further, honestly, with you than I normally would because I know this is a role playing exercise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just err on the side of love. Drop some truth, get them to start thinking and asking questions, and leave the rest up to God. If
Yeah.
they, are meant to see it, that's just my style. And
Mm-hmm.
it's someone told me in my recent class I'm doing Foundations of Freedom. They said, Toni, you're given the gift of mercy. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, look at it that way.
Good.
So my husband tells me I let people off the hook too easily. I'm like, but I like seeing it your
No,
way.
yeah. I mean, if it were going to, I am more libertarian than I am Republican. I tell you something though. Whenever somebody accuses me of being Christian nationalist, I say, look, I happen to be a Christian who lives in America, and it influences the way that I do things. And so, if my crime is that I'm living out my Christian life in all areas, including politics, that's okay. And I know that there are a lot of Christians in Germany that stayed out of the fray and let Hitler come to power. And you cannot say that wasn't the people like what's that famous guy's name? You know who it is. What's the movie?
Bonhoeffer?
Yeah, that guy.
That
I knew
guy.
I knew what it was. I was just pulling your leg.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I mean, he came to that Christian nationalist argument there, and he said, "No, we got to stop this." He saw what was going on. I can tell you right now that we get the government that we don't fight for, not the ones that we do fight for. So if we don't fight for things, somebody's going to win that, and we're gonna look back. And I think was it Benjamin Franklin said, you know. If you are willing to give up freedom for security, you end up with neither.
Yep.
And so that's just the way it is. And it's like, so this is a topic we could have talked about for a very long time, but we got there. I
I'm
think
kind
maybe
of
this.
impressed how long you kept that going. I was like, dang,
I
most
I
lefties are not
I
that.
I like to debate. And I had to keep it going because I felt like I had to give you a hard time. And now because that was the only reason that we did this whole thing, is just to give you a hard time. It's been like 6 months and I have not been able to give you a hard time. And that's what I have to do. It's my job as a host. I have to make my my guests squirm and get the right answers.
You kept me on my toes. That was good.
That's
That was
good.
really good.
Well, hopefully somebody will listen to this thing and go, "Oh my goodness, this is interesting," because Christian nationalism is not going away. People are going to beat us over the head with it until we explain it and say that's not what it is. But yeah, so there it is.
I think the media, I think the tide is turning. I feel the tide is turning with the media. I think we're getting less of that because people are getting educated, and there's all kind of like this podcast, and there's other sources of information. I mean, I saw something on X today that said you don't hate the media enough, and I can't even remember what stupidity they're pounding at now. The whole stuff with Biden not really being healthy, and they're trying to act like, oh, we had no idea. Like, is anybody really falling for that? Like, really? It's something along those lines. And I thought they're absolutely right. The media, what's the acronym I heard? Most effective devil in America. Media, MEDIA. That could not be any truer. I mean, you don't hate them enough. The mainstream, turn them off, find another source of your news. Why do you think the way you do? I thought the way I did because I listened to the media. And as soon as I started even asking, are they telling the truth? Woo! What an eye opener that was.
Oh, it's exactly true. And I can tell you that you don't win hearts and minds by being quiet. You have to do, and all I tell people is, and because I mean, look, I do an update on Israel at war every single day since October 7th, 2023. You don't think I get a few comments on I get some, because you talk about the hatred of Jews. It is all over the place.
I don't know how you
Anti-Semitism.
do it. I don't think I can fight that one.
Well, I've learned a lot, and people, if people keep themselves from using foul language, I let them talk. But I can tell you, people that don't know the Bible, they're not Christians. I don't expect them to believe like I believe. The people that I have the hardest time with are Christians who say they know their Bible and they still are saying that Israel is bad, and that I just go, where are you reading the same Bible I'm reading? So, but that all comes down to what we've been talking about. We got to wrap this thing up because I always like to keep these things right at an hour. And I'm gonna surprise you today, Toni. I'm not gonna make you pray. See there,
Wow.
because it's I mean it's what almost midnight where you're at. So who knows where your brain's gonna be at if you don't have coffee. So
I'm a night owl. I'm just getting started.
yeah, 2:00 is when I go, hey, I should probably get some sleep now. And I've got you beat on age. Anyway, though, the point I'm making is this: if you're going to come to an argument, there's two things you got to There's two things you got to do, and one thing you need to have. There's two things you got to do. First off, don't argue past the point that nobody wants to hear you. And secondly, respect the other person's opinion, but respect it enough to counter it in love. And then the third thing you need to do is know when to stop and go, okay, we're not going to agree right now. We're maybe not agree at all, but thank you for having this discussion. And we don't want it to devolve into an argument and lose friendships and all sorts of stuff, have that nasty divorce on Facebook or whatever it is. Just earn the right to talk to them and then know when to start and know when to stop, but always make sure you can give them the information that they need to make up a decision if they want to change. So it's basic, respectful conversations. So
I love it.
yeah,
I love it. You've kept me on my toes. That was awesome. I should probably do that more often.
I'll be nicer. I'll be nicer next time. Oh my goodness. So what are you doing next before we get out of here? What are you doing next? What's going to be your next project?
So in addition to working for Patriot Academy, I'm super excited about the new curriculum, the campus that they're building. My oldest daughter is not quite old enough to go to Leadership Congress, but I'm really looking forward to that. And we're in Pennsylvania. We are working on getting people to run for what's called judge of elections. So our primary was yesterday. We had 2 statewide court races for 2 different courts in the state, and a little bit of a battle between the grassroots and what we feel is the uniparty establishment. They endorsed 2 candidates. The grassroots wanted 2 different candidates, and we did our best. And one of the grassroots candidates won, and one of the establishment's candidates won. So I think we're making headway and showing the party that they're not just going to pick for us, and we're not just going to eat whatever they're serving up and swallow it and like it and not say anything, which felt like a good thing. And then we recruited Audit the Vote did a campaign where we recruited new judge of elections, which is just the head of the polling place on election day. You run the precinct. You're there to make sure that everything reconciles at the end of the day, that everyone that's voting is who they say they are. You know, if the shenanigans are going to happen on the ground, that's the position that can stop it. We recruited 18 different counties, new judge of elections through 18 different counties for our primary. And so we're really going to focus in November on getting more of those and getting the ones we recruited elected, but then also getting rid of our 3 Supreme Court judges who are completely legislating from the bench, did not allow President Trump's lawsuits to go forward in 2020, which is why they couldn't get any evidence. And we can get rid of them and potentially get our court back to constitutional judges. So that's what we're working on.
Good. Not like anything else to do, right?
I started seeing we're going like 2 minutes over. I'm like, I better shut up. I could talk.
No, it's okay. If I go over, I try to shoot for an hour, but if I go a little longer, nobody's going to be hurt. So anyway, though, it's been nice having you on the program again. Let's not wait so long between the next one.
For real.
Let's keep these things going because, there people have got some questions. You've got some answers, and I think we need to hear from you. You are definitely the example of somebody who's just a regular citizen who saw something extraordinary happening and needed to get in the fray. And you probably, I know, you challenged yourself and stretched yourself, and I like to think you're better for it, but you're doing stuff that a lot of people don't want to do, but you're leading the way by showing people you can do it. A mother, a wife, a mother, can make a difference. And so you just got to get out there and do it. And obviously, as a Christian, there was a question I was going to ask you to stretch you on that when we're doing the role play, but I'll leave that for another day. But
yes, please.
Yes, please. I saw you roll your eyes once. I said, we're done. No, you were fine. You're fine. So anyway, though, so let's go ahead and pray, and then I'll close this thing down. Let's go ahead and pray. Father, we thank you for Toni and all the work that she's doing. She's taking the arrows for a lot of people, but she's also leading. She's blazing the path for an awful lot of other people to do the same things that need to be done, not only in Pennsylvania, but every state of the union. And so we thank you for her. We pray that you bless her. Let her relationship with her kids and her husband remain strong. Let her not give her the wisdom from on high to know what to do and what not to do. And I pray that. But Father, overall, I just ask that right now we'll realize that we cannot just sit back idly and let our world go to hell in a handbasket. We have the light of the Lord in us. We have the light of the gospel. We need to not only disciple them, but disciple the nations. We need to lead them and see what God would want. We know that it's a tough thing to do. We've got an awful lot of well-oiled machines working against us. They've got the lamestream media working on their side. But Father, greater are you that's in us than he that is in the world, and we just need to get in there and just fight for what is right, and that we'll be giving to our children should you tarry a better country than what we have right now. I ask in Jesus' name, Amen. Yeah. So, Toni, I'm going to go ahead and close this down. I'm going to throw you back into the green room here, which is neither green or a room. But thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks for having me. I hope to be back sooner rather than later.
Yes, we'll make that work. So, thank you for joining us once again for another edition of God's News in the News, current events, biblical perspective. There's the camera down there. We'll see you next time.